Hey everyone, tonight we travel back to medieval times, not to witness famous battles or royal feasts, but to explore something far more intimate and mysterious. The ways families remembered their lost loved ones in a world without photos or portraits. Before you settle in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with these journeys. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always inspiring to see this community from all over the globe. Now, lower the lights, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's quietly step into tonight's story together. The family who kept a lock of hair wrapped in linen. Imagine yourself in a small, timbered house, the walls thick with the scent of wood smoke and aging thatch. The world outside is muffled, winter settling softly against the windows, but within these walls, the rhythm of family life continues, quiet and deliberate. There is comfort in routine, the gentle crackle of the fire, the sound of water poured from a pitcher, the slow hush of wool being spun in the corner. Each member of the household moves with a certain carefulness, shaped by seasons of hardship and moments of quiet joy. Beneath a simple bed, set back from the hearth, rests a wooden chest, its surface worn smooth by many hands, its iron hinges creaking softly when opened. There is nothing extravagant about its contents. A spare shift, a bundle of letters, perhaps a wooden comb or a half-finished piece of embroidery. But in the heart of the chest, wrapped carefully in folded linen, lies a treasure of another kind. A single curl of hair, bound tightly with thread, tucked away as if it were more precious than gold. This lock of hair tells a story without words. Perhaps it once belonged to a child who filled the house with laughter, or to a parent whose memory still lingers in the shadows of every room. The linen, soft from years of handling, carries the faintest scent of lavender or rosemary dried from last summer's garden. On cold evenings, when the wind pressed hard against the shutters and the darkness gathered in the corners, the mother would lift the chest onto her lap and quietly unfold the cloth. She would hold the delicate curl between her fingers, feeling the softness, tracing the spiral as if it contained the warmth of a vanished presence. In a world without photographs, without recordings or painted portraits for ordinary people, memory was preserved in touch and ritual. A lock of hair, cut before parting or after loss, became a link to the absent. It was a way of holding on to what could not be kept, of bridging the space between now and then, here and gone. Each strand seemed to hold a world of memory, a first smile, a song sung before bed, a hand held tight in the twilight hours. The mother's hands, worn and gentle, would linger over the hair as if hoping to summon a voice, a breath, a fleeting echo of the past. The rhythm of the household moved forward, day after day, shaped by tasks and seasons. Bread was baked, wool was carded, water drawn from the well, each action woven into the fabric of daily survival. Yet always, there remained a space set apart for memory. A drawer that closed softly, a linen cloth carefully folded, a moment stolen by the fire when the past was allowed to return. The mother never spoke of the hair except in quiet prayer, but the other children sometimes glimpsed her in the half-light, head bowed, fingers pressed to the linen as if the warmth of memory could ease the ache of loss. Such tokens were not uncommon. Throughout centuries and across cultures, families found ways to keep memory alive with what little they possessed. A single lock of hair, a broken toy, a bit of ribbon, each carried the weight of love and longing, the hope that what had been lost was not truly gone. In times of sickness, war, or famine, these small relics became anchors, holding grief in place so that life might continue. They gave shape to sorrow, allowing those left behind to honor the vanished without letting go entirely. When the wind howled and the candles guttered low, the mother would return the linen bundle to its chest, tucking it beneath spare clothing as if to keep it safe from the cold. She would press the lid down gently, her movements careful and unhurried, as though each step in the ritual kept the memory alive for another night. Above her, the timbers creaked in the settling house, and the quiet pulse of family life continued. A child's cough, the shifting of feet in sleep, the deep breath of someone dreaming. So, as you drift now into the soft haze of memory, imagine the feel of linen in your hands, the faint weight of a curl of hair, the warmth of a house filled with stories and silence. The rhythm of loss and remembrance is as old as time. woven into every fiber, every careful gesture, every quiet evening when the past is close enough to touch. In that gentle space, the lock of hair endures, a fragile, powerful link between presence and absence, between the world as it is and as it once was, between love and the silent hush of memory. The widow who lit a tallow candle on the same day each year. Imagine yourself in a small village, where the air before dawn is thick with quiet, the darkness lingering a moment longer before the world wakes. Here, among stone cottages clustered along a winding lane, traditions unfold in their own gentle rhythm, repeating year after year, almost unnoticed except by those who need them most. There is a window, low and unadorned, facing east to catch the earliest light. Each year, on the same day, before even the birds begin their morning chorus, a widow rises in her modest home. Her movements are slow, measured, as she prepares for a ritual as familiar as the turning of the seasons. She reaches for a tallow candle, its surface smooth and slightly warm from the shelter of the cupboard. With practiced hands, she places it in the window's alcove, shielding it from drafts with a small, curved palm. In the hush, she strikes flint to steel. The spark catches, then flickers into flame, and the small room is suddenly shaped by the golden glow, a circle of light blooming against the gray edges of dawn. She sits nearby, the lines of her face softened in the candle's warmth, her thoughts wandering across memories she rarely speaks aloud. Outside, the village remains still. The only sound is the soft crackle of the wick as the tallow melts, pooling gently at the base. As the flame stands steady in the window, neighbors who pass on their early errands pause for a moment. They know this ritual, its quiet message needing no words. The candle is a sign as clear as any spoken phrase, a marking of absence, a silent act of devotion. Some tip their heads in silent greeting, others offer a small prayer, each one respecting the gentle boundary between private grief and public acknowledgement. The day unfolds slowly. The candle's glow lingers long after the sun has risen, a steady presence beside the bustle of daily tasks. For the widow, each year brings a quiet comfort. Lighting the candle is not only a gesture of remembrance, but also a way to stitch the past to the present. In her mind, memories drift through the room. Her husband's laughter at the hearth, the weight of his coat hung by the door, the shape of his hand resting in hers. These are recollections worn smooth by repetition, made softer by time. Inside the house, life continues in gentle patterns. She tends the fire, sweeps the floor, and mends linens by the same light that once illuminated shared meals and quiet evenings. The candle's scent, a hint of animal fat, familiar and earthy, mingles with the fresh air that seeps through the window cracks. Hours slip by, marked only by the shortening of the candle and the slow advance of sunlight across the table. For the village, the ritual is both ordinary and quietly profound. Other homes, too, carry silent traditions. A sprig of rosemary tucked in a doorway, a loaf of bread set aside for the lost. These acts weave a subtle thread of connection between neighbors, a language of care that needs no conversation. The widow's candle becomes a gentle anchor in the communal calendar, a reminder that grief and love move at their own pace. Children learn to ask, in soft voices, about the candle's meaning. They are told, simply, that it marks the day her husband departed, and that the light is for him. As years go by, the story is retold, sometimes with new details, sometimes only with a gesture toward the window and the promise of a memory kept alive. When evening falls and the candle's flame has shrunk to a pale glow, the widow returns to the window. She watches as it flickers, then fades, the last wisp of smoke curling into the air. The room returns to shadow, but the ritual's comfort lingers, as steady as the turning of the year. She folds away the candle stub, closes the shutters, and moves through the house with the quiet assurance that, for another year, the memory has been honored. Outside, the neighbors notice the empty window and remember the small flame that burned in silence, its simple message carried through another day. The world continues in its ordinary fashion, buckets drawn from wells, bread baked, gardens tended, but in the memory of the candle, there is a gentle assurance that love, quietly tended, never truly disappears. In this way, the widow's candle becomes more than a ritual. It is a part of the village itself, a silent promise that devotion, no matter how humble or quiet, can illuminate even the darkest corners of the world. As you imagine yourself in that peaceful village, let the image of the candle's glow rest quietly in your thoughts, a gentle light marking the rhythm of memory and care. The mason who carved a symbol into the hearthstone. Imagine yourself in the soft golden dusk of a medieval evening, the hush of a stone cottage gathering quietly around you. The air within is tinged with the scent of wood smoke and bread, the hearth at the room's center breathing out gentle heat as twilight settles beyond the windows. Shadows lean along the floor and walls, flickering with the slow dance of embers, and in this stillness, you become aware of the ancient rhythm that shapes such nights, a slow, measured cadence, marked by the rituals of ordinary lives. In a house much like this, a mason once lived. His days were spent among stone and dust, his hands roughened by labor, his eyes familiar with the subtle grain of granite, the secret music of chisel against rock. Each evening, he returned home, exchanging the clamor of the worksite for the familiar hush of family voices and the comfort of his own fire. For him, the hearthstone was more than a source of warmth. It was the heart of his world, a silent companion to all the seasons of his life. Years passed, and with them came the quiet losses known to all families. A loved one's voice faded from the house, a presence once constant now missing from the evening meal, the gentle pattern of daily conversation forever altered. Yet memory clung stubbornly to objects, the soft fray of a shawl, a familiar mug, the warmth that lingered where someone once sat. For the mason, memory found its most enduring form in stone. One night, as embers glowed low, the mason knelt by the hearth and pressed his thumb to the worn, pale slab at its center. He drew out a small tool from his apron, one that had shaped lintels and arches, garden walls and crypts, and carefully etched a symbol into the stone. A circle, perfect and whole, contained within a square, firm and true. It was a mark of his own design, something simple yet deeply personal, a gesture of remembrance that would not draw the eye of visitors but would endure longer than any spoken word. This act was private, quiet, performed in the company of fading light and memory. As weeks drifted by, it became a ritual. Each evening, as the fire died and the house settled into sleep, the mason knelt and traced the symbol with his thumb. The stone warmed beneath his touch, and the pattern grew smoother, the carved lines softening beneath years of repetition. It was a ritual as steady as the turning of the seasons, a way of keeping memory alive, not in grand gestures or public mourning, but in a small, persistent motion that no one else need ever witness. Life around the hearth continued. Meals were cooked and eaten, stories told and laughter shared. Children played at the mason's feet, sometimes glancing at the mark on the stone, but never asking about its meaning. To them, it was simply another texture in the tapestry of home, another small mystery woven into the daily pattern of life. Yet for the mason, the symbol was an anchor, a point of quiet continuity, a promise that remembrance could outlast loss. The world outside pressed on, changing in ways both swift and subtle. New families arrived, old neighbors departed, and with every passing year, the stones of the cottage bore witness to change. Fires burned and faded, winters came and went, and the hearthstone, weathered by generations of footsteps and the fall of ash, retained its secret. Sometimes a visitor might notice the odd shape carved at its center, a circle and a square, smoothed by time, and wonder at its purpose. Most never looked closely enough to see. To remember is a gentle rebellion against the forgetting that time demands. The mason's act was not dramatic, but enduring. No inscription of names, no dates or grand declarations, just a mark, quietly meaningful, outlasting even the memory of who had made it. The symbol became part of the house, as ordinary as the grain of wood in the table or the pattern of cracks in the ceiling. Yet in the hush that fell each night, when only embers glowed and silence deepened, the mason's thumb found the mark again, tracing a line that memory refused to surrender. This is how many lives endure, not in monuments or grand stories, but in quiet, persistent gestures that slip beneath the notice of the world. The circle within the square became a secret conversation between stone and skin, a comfort carried through years of change. Even as new voices filled the house and the mason's place at the hearth grew empty, the ritual remained. Sometimes, on cold evenings long after, another hand might brush against the mark and pause, feeling the faint groove, the warmth left by countless touches, the echo of a life gently remembered. As you listen to the rhythm of the house, the settling of timbers, the whisper of wind against stone, the last soft sigh of the fire, it is easy to imagine the mason's hand at work, quietly preserving what would otherwise vanish. Each home holds its secrets, each life its rituals. And sometimes, the smallest mark on a hearthstone is enough to hold back the darkness, to keep memory burning, softly, in the heart of the night. The family who hung a simple painted board on the wall. Imagine yourself in a quiet house, somewhere on the edge of a small, forgotten village. The walls are rough with lime wash, warmed by late afternoon sun filtering through the only window. There is a hush here, broken only by distant birds or the low rhythm of voices drifting from the lane. You stand just inside the doorway, your gaze resting on a modest wooden board, no larger than your open hand, hanging on a crooked nail beside the hearth. At first glance, it might seem insignificant, just a pale panel, its surface worn smooth by years of touching hands, the colors faded to gentle earth tones. But look closer. You notice a face rendered there, soft features traced in muted ochre and charcoal, a hint of blue in the eyes, the memory of laughter in the curve of a mouth. The lines are simple, the paint applied in quick, uneven strokes. It is not the work of a master, but something much humbler, a likeness created by a steady hand and a hopeful heart. This board is more than decoration. It holds a presence, a reminder of someone loved and lost, or perhaps far away. Every morning, as the household stirs from sleep and the day's work begins, a ritual unfolds. A mother or father, child or elder, will pause before the painted face, offering a word, a nod, a gentle touch on the edge of the wood. It is as natural as breathing, this act of greeting, a small thread in the larger fabric of daily life. In houses where money is scarce and luxuries few, such images take on a quiet power. They are tokens of memory, made not for show, but for comfort. Sometimes, the face on the board belongs to a parent gone too soon, a child taken by illness, or a loved one called away by war or trade. Other times, it is a saint or a figure from a story, borrowed to fill the emptiness left by absence. The details blur, but the feeling lingers, something between reverence and longing woven into each day. The rhythm of life continues around the board. Morning light glances off its surface as the fire is coaxed to life and bread set to rise. Children play beneath it, only half aware of its watchful gaze. In the evening, as candles are lit and stories told, the painted face glows softly in the shadows, a silent witness to laughter and quarrels alike. In the larger world beyond these walls, art might be reserved for the wealthy, the grand portraits and golden icons found in churches or the halls of lords. But for ordinary families, a simple painted board could be as precious as any jewel. Sometimes, a traveling craftsman would offer to paint such images for a few coins, or a clever child would try their own hand with whatever pigments could be made from garden or kitchen. Oak, walnut, and poplar made sturdy canvases. Color was ground from earth, ash, and the petals of summer flowers. The board became part of the home itself, its edges darkened by smoke and time, its surface polished by years of attention. Dust gathered in its cracks. Spiders wove webs in the corners, undisturbed by anyone who respected its quiet place of honor. Sometimes, a guest would ask about the face, and a story would be told, softly, as if sharing a secret with the house itself. You can imagine the comfort such a small thing might bring. In a world where news traveled slowly and loss was a familiar guest, the board offered a kind of anchor. On difficult mornings, when the sky was gray and the bread was slow to rise, or when a neighbor's news brought the weight of grief, someone would pause before the painted face, searching for reassurance, or simply the familiar comfort of routine. Even on joyful days, the board was not forgotten. At weddings, births, and feast days, it was garlanded with wildflowers or polished to a gentle shine. In winter, it was tucked behind cloth to protect it from the damp. When a new child was born, their tiny hand might be pressed against the wood, leaving a mark in flour or soot, a sign of continuity, a promise that the memory would linger on. The act of greeting the painted face became as much a part of daily life as sweeping the floor or drawing water from the well. Over years, the habit grew so familiar that it required no thought at all. A hand might reach out in the half-darkness of early morning, touching the board before the mind had even fully woken. The words spoken to it were not grand pronouncements, but soft and ordinary, "Good morning, watch over us, we miss you." When strangers passed through, some might see only a bit of old wood, but for the family, the board held a living presence. In times of change or hardship, it was a reminder that the bonds of love could outlast absence and time. Children, grown and gone, would remember the feeling of standing before the painted face, and carry the memory with them into new homes, sometimes painting a new likeness for their own walls. Long after the house itself had fallen quiet, its hearth cold, its roof fallen in, archaeologists might find the remains of such a board, paint traces clinging stubbornly to weathered wood. A puzzle, perhaps, but a clue to the quiet, emotional life of people long gone. In these fragments, the story survives. How simple things, paint, wood, a loving gaze, were enough to sustain hope, memory, and connection. And so, as you drift through the hush of this old house, you can sense the gentle pulse of centuries, a rhythm shaped by small rituals, by love made visible in humble ways. Each morning greeting, each quiet pause before the painted face, is a reminder that history is built not only on great events, but on the silent habits of ordinary people reaching across time for what matters most. The mother who wore a wool girdle from her daughter's clothes. Imagine yourself standing in a dim, peaceful cottage at dawn. The air is gentle, filled with the comforting scent of hearth smoke and wool. Across the quiet room, a mother carefully folds the last of her daughter's outgrown clothes, hands lingering for a moment on the coarse fabric, thumb tracing the faded stitches that once rested against a smaller body. There is a hush to this act, a silent ritual that needs no audience. Life in the medieval world is a constant cycle of holding on and letting go, of finding meaning in small, everyday things that tether the past gently to the present. Wool, with its warmth and weight, was woven into nearly every part of daily life. A tunic that began as a child's outer layer, bright with youth and the memory of play, eventually faded, its edges softening, its colors blurring with every wash. Clothes were precious, not easily replaced or discarded. To own even a few garments was a mark of security. Every piece was patched, mended, and sometimes finally unmade, the threads given new purpose as seasons and fortunes changed. It was not uncommon for mothers, after years of tending and watching their children grow, to save these worn fabrics. In quiet moments, away from the rush of chores and the noise of others, a mother might tear careful strips from an old tunic, feeling the texture between her fingers, rough in places, but softened by years of touch. With patient hands, she braided these strips together, twisting them into a girdle, a simple band to be worn beneath her gown, hidden from view. No one saw it, and perhaps no one ever knew. Yet, for the woman who wore it, the girdle was a quiet link between what had been and what was still unfolding. Each knot and weave held a private memory. A daughter's laughter echoing in the garden, the worried hush of fevered nights, the quick, bright days that passed too quickly. To wear this woolen girdle was to carry a piece of her child close, not just in thought, but in a way that touched her skin and shaped the rhythm of her days. The medieval world was full of such small, unseen acts of remembrance. Lives were marked by constant change, children growing, moving on, sometimes lost to illness or distance. For mothers, the urge to hold onto a trace of their children was both practical and deeply emotional. There were no photographs to preserve a moment, no letters that could always find their way home. Instead, there were tokens and rituals, woven quietly into daily routine. Some kept a lock of hair, a carved trinket, or a length of ribbon. Others, like the mother with her woolen girdle, found comfort in something that could be worn and felt, a private tether to those she loved most. As she moved through her daily chores, kneading bread, drawing water, mending hems, she was always aware of the soft, familiar pressure around her waist. It was both weight and comfort, a reminder of the child who had once needed her for everything, now venturing into the world in new ways. There might be days when the fabric itched, or when the band felt heavy beneath the layers of her dress. But always, there was a quiet pride, an invisible strength drawn from this simple creation. Few records mention these hidden practices, but traces survive in old inventories, in the quiet passing down of family stories. Archaeologists sometimes find braids of cloth among the layers of earth beneath ruined homes. Nothing grand, nothing marked by gold, but strong with the memory of everyday love. The girdle, worn thin by years of use, might one day be unbraided, its wool transformed yet again, the cycle of renewal continuing. In the rhythm of medieval life, where each day brought both hardship and small joys, such acts offered a kind of reassurance. The girdle was never meant for display. It was not a symbol for others to admire, but a secret comfort, known only to the one who wore it. The mother felt its presence in every movement, a gentle tightening when she stooped, a warmth across her back in the coldest months, a softness that eased the ache of separation. As you drift into this story, imagine yourself in her place, the world outside growing quiet, the fire low, the house settling into its nighttime hush. You feel the texture of wool against your skin, the closeness of memory woven with every thread. In the solitude of the evening, you understand how something so humble could carry such meaning, a silent, enduring connection to what matters most. In the darkness, with only the embers for company, the rhythm of her life continues, steady, patient, and always, in some quiet way, intertwined with love that endures beyond sight or sound. The pilgrim who walked with a token tucked in his satchel. Imagine yourself on a long and winding road, the sky soft with dawn and the fields stretching silent and silver on either side. The world is still waking, birds calling from tangled hedges, a thin mist clinging to the furrows, the air holding the faintest chill. A lone figure makes his way along the path, boots dusted with earth, shoulders hunched against the uncertain weather. He carries little, a sturdy staff, a worn cloak, and, slung across his back, a leather satchel holding everything needed for a journey without a certain end. Within that satchel, among crusts of bread and a flask of water, lies a simple river stone, smooth, cool, its edges shaped by years of water and sun. The stone is not heavy, but it has a weight all its own. It was chosen carefully by the pilgrim's father, pressed into his hand in the hush before parting. No words were needed then. The gesture was quiet, but it lingered, a promise carried forward, a memory nestled alongside each step. For the pilgrim, every reach into his satchel brings the stone to his hand. The feeling is always the same, a moment of coolness, a gentle pressure, the shape familiar even in darkness. Sometimes, as he pauses beneath a chestnut tree to eat his midday bread, his fingers linger on the stone, tracing its surface as if it holds more than just the memory of a riverbank. With every touch, he is reminded that love is not bound by distance or the passing of days. It is a journey that winds and meanders, that sometimes fades from view but never truly ends. The days of travel unfold with a gentle repetition. The pilgrim walks through small villages, where the air smells of fresh bread and wood smoke, and across open fields, where the only sound is the steady crunch of gravel beneath his boots. At night, he finds shelter where he can, a hayloft, the porch of a chapel, or the welcoming hearth of a kind stranger. In the quiet hours before sleep, he sometimes takes out the stone and turns it in his hands, letting his thoughts drift to the father who gave it to him, to stories told in the warmth of a distant home. Life on the road is simple, shaped by the rhythm of feet and breath, the sun's slow arc across the sky. Each morning brings new miles, new faces, new uncertainties. But always, the token remains, a quiet companion tucked close, a comfort when the path grows steep or loneliness settles heavy. The stone is constant in a world of change, a thread running backward through memory, linking one heart to another across time and distance. It is easy to imagine the pilgrim's father choosing the stone from the river's edge, his hand closing around it as if testing its fit. Perhaps he remembered his own journeys, or the way water wears down hardness over the years. He understood that to walk a long road is to carry both burden and blessing, that love can be both presence and absence, longing and arrival. In offering the stone, he offered a reminder that even as we move onward, we are never truly alone. Villagers sometimes ask about the pilgrim's path, the places he has seen, the reason he travels so far. He answers quietly, telling stories of distant shrines, of rainstorms and clear mornings, of fellow wanderers and silent prayers. But he does not speak of the stone, of the small, steady reassurance it offers. That part of his journey remains private, a secret shared only between father and son, between memory and hope. As seasons turn and the roads lengthen, the token gathers its own story. The leather of the satchel grows soft and worn. The stone itself becomes warmer, its surface burnished by countless touches. Each mark is a testament to persistence, to the quiet endurance of love. When the pilgrim steps slow and he finds himself near another river, he may pause to hold the stone in sunlight, to feel the connection running backward and forward, through his own hands, through his father's, through the endless journey that is life itself. So as you drift, imagine the soft press of a stone in your hand, the scent of fields and rain, the comfort of a journey where love is never far behind. The rhythm of footsteps, the coolness of river water, the gentle weight of memory, these are the tokens we carry, each one a quiet reminder that the road is long, but we do not walk it alone. In every journey, in every moment of rest, in the quiet comfort of a token tucked in a satchel, the presence of love endures, winding onward with no clear end, steady and constant as the river's song. The village that kept a list of names read at each feast. Imagine yourself in a small village at the edge of autumn. The fields have been gathered in. The air is crisp with the scent of turned earth and cooling leaves. In the center of the village stands a long, low hall, its walls built from timber darkened by years of smoke and laughter. This is the time of harvest, a moment when work and worry give way, just for a night, to warmth, celebration, and the shared comfort of company. Inside, the glow of candlelight flickers across beams and settles on the faces of neighbors, friends, and family gathered at heavy tables. The room is full, yet the mood is gentle, a hush woven from the anticipation of feasting, the rhythm of familiar voices, and the slow drift of smoke from the hearth. At the center, a table is cleared, and an elder stands ready to begin a ritual older than anyone present. From a special chest, a long roll of parchment is brought out, handled with care. Its edges are worn, the ink faded in places, the surface softened by the touch of many hands. As the elder unrolls the parchment, the room grows quieter still. Children lean forward, adults lower their voices, and even those lost in thought return to the moment. The world narrows to the pool of candlelight, the parchment, and the hush that fills the hall. The reading begins, each name spoken in slow, measured cadence. Some are familiar, grandparents and parents, friends whose laughter once filled the room. Others are remembered only as stories, names that evoke distant faces, gestures, and fragments of song. For a time, each is given weight, the sound of the name echoing gently in the hearts of those who listen. It is not a list to be hurried. The elder pauses between names, allowing each one to settle, to be carried quietly through the air like a blessing. Children listen and understand in their own way. Some recognize the pattern of names as the music of memory, a gentle reminder that those who are gone still shape the world around them. For others, the ritual is a first lesson in the depth of belonging, the way memory can stretch across years and generations, holding together the fabric of the village like thread through cloth. As the final names are read, the elder rolls up the parchment with the same care as before. The list is returned to its chest, tucked away for another year. In the silence that follows, everyone feels the same gentle weight, the presence of those remembered, the gratitude for another harvest, the shared promise that memory will always have a place at the table. After the reading, the feast begins in earnest. Bread is broken, cider poured, laughter rises once more. Yet something subtle lingers in the air, a quiet acknowledgement that every moment of joy is shaped by those who came before. The food tastes richer, the stories deeper, the bonds between neighbors more certain. This ritual, repeated each year, weaves remembrance into the very pattern of life. It marks the passing of time not with sorrow, but with gratitude, and binds the living to the departed in a way that nourishes all who gather. Even the youngest children, though they may not remember the names themselves, come to understand that to be named is to be cherished, and to be remembered is to remain part of the village's story. As the night deepens and the candles burn lower, the list of names is never far from mind. Its presence offers comfort, a gentle assurance that no one is ever truly lost so long as memory is kept alive. In the gentle hush that falls after the reading, you might find yourself listening for the quiet echo of names, feeling their warmth settle around you like a blanket. And as sleep draws near, the memory of the harvest feast lingers, the glow of candles, the taste of bread, the soft cadence of names spoken into the silence. The rhythm of remembrance, steady and calm, continues on, nourishing and gentle, through every season, in every quiet corner of the world. The weaver who wove a hidden thread into every cloth. Imagine yourself at dawn, in a small stone cottage at the edge of a quiet village. The morning air is cool, rich with the scent of dew settling on grass, and the distant call of birds as the first light stretches across low, misty fields. Inside, the hearth glows softly, and in the far corner stands a sturdy wooden loom, a familiar fixture, its shape woven into the background of daily life. The weaver rises before most, her footsteps light against the worn boards, her hands already set to the silent rhythm that has shaped her days for as long as she can remember. Her world is one of gentle repetition, the combing of fleece, the twisting of fibers, the measured work of hands guiding thread through warp and weft. The loom sings a quiet music as she works, a steady clatter broken only by the rustle of fabric or the faint hiss of the kettle over the fire. Not long ago, her days were shared, her husband's laughter mingling with the sounds of shuttle and spinning wheel, the rhythm of two voices tracing out the ordinary hours of village life. But loss has its own cadence, one that leaves space in the air and lingers in the stillness after dark. Yet the weaver, shaped by years of careful work, finds a new ritual for remembrance. In the days after his death, she gathers a single skein of wool and dyes it a muted blue, a color deeper than sky, softer than indigo, touched by the quiet sadness she carries in her heart. Each morning, as she prepares her loom, she draws out one slender thread from this blue skein and lays it among the pale strands that will form the next piece of cloth. Sometimes she works it into the hem of a blanket, sometimes it slips through the center of a shawl or along the border of a linen towel. The blue thread is never meant to stand out. It is hidden, subtle, visible only to the most attentive eye. As the seasons turn and word of her craft spreads, neighbors and strangers come to buy her cloth. They admire the softness of the weave, the sturdiness of her blankets, the warmth of her shawls. None notice the single blue thread, sometimes glimmering in sunlight, sometimes lost entirely in the folds. To each buyer, the cloth is simply well made, a comfort against the cold or a gift for a new bride, a baby, or a weary traveler. But for the weaver, every finished piece carries a secret weight, a quiet commemoration woven into the fabric itself. Each time she passes the shuttle, she remembers a moment, laughter shared over supper, the sound of footsteps at the door, the way the light once caught in her husband's hair as he bent to feed the fire. The blue thread is a marker of memory, gentle and enduring, a way of keeping love present in a world that moves steadily forward. Over time, her ritual becomes as ordinary as breathing. She dyes new skeins when the old runs low, always in the same shade, always with the same quiet care. Some mornings she weaves quickly, the rhythm of work carrying her thoughts away. Other days, she lingers over a piece, pausing to touch the blue thread, to remember, to grieve, to honor what is lost. The village changes as the years pass. Children grow up and leave, neighbors drift away, new faces appear in the market. Still, the weaver remains at her loom, her practice as steady as the seasons. On long winter nights, she sits by the fire and runs her thumb along the hem of her own shawl, finding the blue thread by feel, tracing its quiet path through the cloth. In this way, memory becomes a comfort that outlasts spoken stories or fading photographs, a presence as subtle and enduring as the warmth of wool itself. Sometimes a buyer will notice a faint shimmer in their blanket or the tiniest difference in the color of a stitch. They might wonder aloud, and the weaver only smiles, content to let her secret remain. For her, the act of weaving is more than craft. It is the slow, steady practice of remembrance, a way of giving shape to loss without ever naming it aloud. In the hush of the evening, as the fire burns low and the world outside is wrapped in shadow, the weaver looks at the cloth piled neatly on her table. Each piece is different: a shawl for warmth, a towel for use, a blanket to cradle a sleeping child, but every one carries the same secret. A single thread, soft blue and silent, a memory made tangible and woven deep into the fabric of ordinary life. As you listen to the soft rhythm of her work, the click of the loom, the sigh of the wind outside, the gentle breathing of a house at rest, you sense the comfort of rituals that endure, of small acts that hold great meaning, of love sustained in the quiet patterns we make and keep. In the hands of the weaver, memory is never lost. It is woven patiently and without end, into the very cloth of the everyday, there to be carried forward, gentle and unseen, as long as the fabric itself survives. The old man who kept a sprig of rosemary in his pocket? Imagine yourself in the earliest hush of morning, when the mist still clings low to the fields and the world feels wrapped in a cool, gentle silence. In a small, weathered cottage on the edge of a village, an old man wakes with the dawn. His movements are careful, measured by years and routine, and his hands are marked by work, broad and strong, but gentler now, the skin creased and sun-warmed. He rises before most, while the hearth still sleeps cold, and steps outside into the garden, where dew glimmers on every leaf. The garden itself is simple, yet carefully tended, the soil turned by hand, paths traced between rows of onions, beans, and herbs. Along the border, rosemary grows thick and green, its slender leaves catching the morning light. It is here that the old man pauses, every day without fail, reaching for a sprig of rosemary with a small, familiar smile. He pinches off a stem, careful not to take too much, and rubs the leaves gently between his fingers. The scent that rises is sharp and clean, a mingling of pine and lemon, earth and sun. He brings the sprig close to his face, breathing deeply, and then tucks it into his shirt pocket, close to his heart. This ritual is simple, almost unremarkable to anyone passing by. But to him, it is the start of every day, as steady as breath itself. The rosemary travels with him, into the house as he tends the embers, through chores as he sweeps the floor or carries water from the well. Its scent accompanies each moment, a small thread of continuity woven into the larger fabric of his life. Those who meet the old man on the village lane might catch a hint of rosemary as he passes, a sudden green fragrance that lingers even after he has moved on. Children notice it first, tugging at their mother's sleeves to ask what smells so clean and strange. Some neighbors nod knowingly, for rosemary has always meant more than flavor for a stew. In many villages, it was a plant of memory, a symbol of faithfulness and recall. Old songs mention it, tucked into wedding bouquets or laid atop graves, always present where memory and love meet. For the old man, the sprig near his heart holds many stories. Some mornings, he pauses by the rosemary patch a little longer, eyes distant as he thinks of faces and voices now gone. Parents who once tended the same plot, a wife whose laughter is now only a memory, friends whose names are spoken softly to the earth. The rosemary, in its quiet, persistent way, gathers these memories and holds them close. The scent brings the past forward, gentle but vivid, each day a reminder of love and loss, of years stacked gently behind. Inside the cottage, the old man moves through familiar tasks, the rosemary's presence a subtle comfort. Its scent mingles with the baking bread, the boiling of water for tea, the dust of flour on rough wood. Sometimes, as the day wears on, the sprig wilts, its green sharpness fading to something softer, more elusive. Yet the memory of its fragrance lingers on his fingers, in his clothes, on the air itself. Even after the leaves are dry and brittle, there is still a trace, a hint that persists into evening, clinging to the folds of the day. On Sundays, the old man visits the village church, where he slips the rosemary sprig into the brim of his hat or lays it quietly beside a weathered stone at the edge of the graveyard. Here, too, rosemary marks the passage of time. Some graves are adorned with it, a tradition as old as memory itself, reminding the living that those who have gone are not forgotten. The old man stands quietly, hat in hand, and breathes the scent of rosemary, mingling his own memories with the hush of prayer and the distant song of birds. Neighbors may ask about his habit, and he answers simply that rosemary helps him remember. There is wisdom in his voice, gentle and without boast. He offers sprigs to others, at births, at weddings, when sickness visits a neighbor's house, or when someone sets off on a long journey. The herb is passed from hand to hand, a symbol of connection, of thoughts that linger when words fade. Over time, the garden itself becomes a place of memory. The old man tends the rosemary year after year, trimming it carefully, encouraging new shoots, always leaving a bit for the bees and birds. Children grow and leave, seasons turn, and the cottage grows quieter, but the patch of green persists, a living legacy as sure as any spoken tale. You might imagine the end of another long day, when the old man returns to his room, emptying his pocket to find the wilted sprig. He sets it by the window, letting the last rays of sunlight gild its edges, and prepares for sleep. The scent of rosemary, faint but real, settles in the air, a gentle anchor for dreams. Tomorrow, the ritual will begin again. A walk in the mist, the touch of green, the memory of all that matters held close. As you drift through this story, you can almost smell the sharp, clean fragrance, feel the comfort of memory wrapped in the simplest daily acts. In the hush of the night, the rosemary waits, growing on quietly in the dark soil, its meaning rooted deep in the lives of those who remember. And so, the old man's habit is woven into the gentle rhythm of his world. A sprig of rosemary near the heart, a living thread of remembrance, carrying the past quietly, patiently, into every new dawn. The children who drew their father's tools in chalk. Imagine a small medieval courtyard, its cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps and rain. The air is cool, touched by the faint scent of wet earth and the gentle echo of distant voices. At the far end of the courtyard, a cluster of children kneel together, their hands dusty and clothes streaked with chalk. In the quiet moments between chores and lessons, they have found a kind of secret ritual, drawing the outline of their father's tools upon the stones. A hammer, its handle broad and square, a chisel long and slender, each shape is traced with care, every line purposeful and deliberate. The tools themselves are never far away. Sometimes they rest against the wall, metal edges dulled from years of use. Other times, they vanish for days as their father carries them to distant work sites, building or mending as he has always done. To the children, these tools are both mysterious and familiar, symbols of labor and livelihood, of skill passed down and work yet to come. Drawing them in chalk is not just a pastime. It is a way to bring their father's presence back into the space, to keep his daily rhythm close even when he is gone. The act of drawing is slow and gentle. A stick of chalk, white or sometimes tinged with faint earth tones, is held with small fingers, pressed softly to the stone. The children trace each curve and angle, copying every notch and where mark as best they can remember. There is no hurry, only the soft murmur of siblings working side by side, and the quiet satisfaction of making something together. Sometimes, a younger child will watch in silence, eyes wide as the shape appears, learning the story that each tool holds. Other times, an older sibling will carefully correct a line, making sure the handle is just the right length, the chisel's tip perfectly sharp. As the afternoon sun begins to fade, their drawings fill the courtyard, simple outlines that shimmer faintly in the changing light. When their father returns, he might pause for a moment, noticing the familiar shapes on the ground, a gentle smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He does not scold or tease. Instead, he recognizes the meaning behind the lines, a quiet act of remembrance, a way for his children to feel close to him, to honor the work that shapes their lives. Sometimes he will kneel down and place his own tool gently next to their chalk outline, showing them how the real and the imagined can live side by side. Inevitably, the weather brings change. Night falls, and the air grows damp. By morning, rain begins to fall, soft at first, then steady, soaking the stones until the chalk lines blur and vanish. The children watch from the doorway, seeing their work washed away. There is no sadness, only the knowledge that they will begin again as soon as the sky clears. The act of drawing is as important as the drawing itself. Each new line is an act of remembering, a way to connect yesterday and today, to mark the passage of time in a world where change is constant. For their parents, these drawings are both ordinary and profound. Life in the medieval world is filled with such small gestures, ways of keeping memory alive, of teaching children about the value of work and the bonds of family. There are no photographs or written stories to capture these moments, only the quiet persistence of chalk and stone. The children do not yet realize how these rituals shape them, how they will one day look back on these afternoons as some of the truest moments of connection they ever knew. Sometimes, as they draw, they talk softly about their father's work, about the buildings he helps to repair, the wooden beams he fits together, the quiet pride he carries home each evening. They wonder if one day they will hold the hammer or chisel in their own hands, if the knowledge of how to use them will pass to them as naturally as the stories told around the evening fire. For now, though, it is enough simply to draw, to see their father's world through lines and shapes, to watch the rain wash it away and then, quietly, begin again. As you imagine this gentle scene, the cool cobblestones, the soft chalk dust, the hush of a world that moves slowly and patiently, there is comfort in the repetition. Each drawing, though fleeting, holds meaning. Each vanished outline is a promise to remember, to honor, to continue. And as the night falls and the courtyard grows quiet, you can almost hear the soft, steady rhythm of childhood, a rhythm that echoes through time, in every home where memory is drawn and redrawn, cherished in the simplest of ways. The widow who whispered her husband's name each night. Imagine yourself in a modest cottage, its walls rough with whitewash and its beams low and darkened by age. The night outside is deep and windless, the sky clouded, the world wrapped in quiet. Within these humble walls, the last coals in the hearth have faded to a soft glow, and the air holds the faint scent of wood smoke and lavender from a sachet tucked beneath a pillow. In this stillness, a widow lies awake, her bed creaking softly as she shifts beneath a patchwork quilt, her mind searching backward through the day to the presence that is now only memory. Long after the fire has died, she lingers in the darkness, her breathing slow, eyes half open to the shadows drifting across the ceiling. The rhythm of the house settles around her. A mouse in the thatch, the tick of cooling stones, the gentle sigh of wind at the shutters. The silence is complete, broken only by the quietest sound, her own voice, a breath above a whisper, speaking a single name. Each night she forms the word, letting it drift into the dark, not for anyone else to hear but for herself, for the memory that lives in the soft outline of the syllables. She speaks his name as if it were a prayer, as if in saying it, she might knit together the edges of a world that has been quietly torn. In the hush, the walls seem to listen. They have borne witness to laughter and quarrel, to births and farewells, to a life lived in company and a loss carried in solitude. Now, as the days pass and the seasons shift, the stones and timbers hold her secrets as gently as any grave, cradling the sound of her whispered hope, her longing, her love. It is easy to picture her days, measured by chores and small comforts, by bread baked in the quiet hours and mending done by the window where the sun falls faintly through the glass. The rhythm of her life has grown slow and careful, shaped by memory and habit. She tends to the small garden behind the house, plucks herbs for her soup, folds her husband's worn shirt, and keeps it tucked in the bottom drawer. Every task carries the echo of another time, another set of hands beside her, a voice that once filled the room and now remains only in memory. Each evening, as she prepares for bed, the house grows more silent. The fire burns low, the candles flicker and fade, and the shadows lengthen on the walls. The bed that once felt too narrow for two now seems impossibly wide. She arranges the quilt just so, smooths the linen, and rests her hand on the empty space beside her. There is comfort in ritual, in the gentle repetition of movements that bind one day to the next. In this way, she carries her husband's presence forward, never letting it slip away entirely. The world beyond her window continues, indifferent to loss. Neighbors pass in the lane, church bells mark the hour, children's laughter drifts on the wind. But in her cottage, time seems slower, the silence deeper. She has learned to find solace in the small things: a bird at the feeder, a shaft of sunlight on the floor, the memory of a hand clasped in her own. But each night, as darkness settles, she returns to her quiet ritual, whispering his name into the empty room. The walls accept the sound, holding it through the night. In the dark, the boundaries between past and present grow thin. She remembers the warmth of his shoulder beside hers, the cadence of his voice, the way he once spoke her own name with care. For a moment, it is almost as if nothing has changed. His presence fills the quiet, and the house breathes around her in peaceful companionship. There are no witnesses but the silent walls, no record of these words beyond the hush of the small room. Yet in this nightly act, there is something enduring, a thread that ties memory to the living world, that insists on love's place even in absence. The rhythm of her whisper, night after night, becomes as much a part of the house as the stones and beams themselves. So, as you drift now, imagine the cool hush of a room at midnight, the gentle curve of a quilt, the sound of a name carried softly into the darkness. The widow's voice lingers in the air, caught and held by the walls as gently as any grave might. In this quiet, in this steadfast ritual, memory endures, subtle, strong, woven into every silent night, as the world moves quietly onward and the heart learns to cherish what remains. The family who shared stories around the winter hearth. Imagine yourself in a quiet cottage, where the world outside is hushed by the deep cold of winter. Frost webs the windows, blurring the outlines of the village and turning the landscape silver beneath the pale moon. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and the warmth of bodies gathered close together. The hearth glows at the heart of the room, its gentle flames casting soft, shifting patterns across stone and worn floorboards. As darkness falls early and the night stretches long, the family draws near the fire, folding themselves into the slow, comforting ritual that marks the rhythm of the season. The wind rattles the shutters, but inside, the only sounds are the crackle of burning logs and the murmur of familiar voices. There is no need for books or parchment here, no ink to record what will be said. Each story lives only in the telling, passed from mouth to mouth, year after year, as constant as the turning of the seasons. One by one, each person takes a turn. The eldest begins, his voice low and steady, spinning tales that have shaped the family's memory for as long as anyone can recall. He tells of the one who laughed louder than anyone else, whose bright spirit warmed the coldest morning. He describes the song that was always sung at harvest's end, its melody so deeply woven into memory that even the youngest can hum the tune. The stories are never quite the same. Small details change, laughter comes in new places, and sometimes a new voice adds another layer, a new thread in the tapestry. As the fire burns, each tale becomes a gentle anchor, holding the family in a world both old and new. Children listen, eyes wide, committing every word to memory. They know the rhythms by heart, the way the story begins, the pauses for laughter, the familiar ending that brings a sense of belonging and calm. Even the stories of loss and hardship are told with a softness that comes from repetition, smoothed over by the retelling, made gentle by time. No record is ever kept, yet the stories seem as permanent as stone. In the hush of the winter night, they take on a life of their own, echoing in the rafters, settling into the cracks of the hearth. The same tales will be told again tomorrow, and the day after, until the world outside softens and the first signs of spring appear. But for now, the darkness and cold only make the fire's warmth and the comfort of familiar voices more precious. In this way, the memory of those who are gone lingers, not in written words, but in the living tradition of storytelling. The family's history is carried not by ink and parchment, but by repetition, by the small rituals of nightly gathering, and by the gentle persistence of love. Stories grow roots in the heart, finding new meaning with each telling, shaping the listeners as surely as any chisel carves stone. As the hour grows late and the embers begin to fade, the family settles into silence, wrapped in the soft memory of all that has been shared. Outside, the world is cold and silent, but within, the glow of the hearth and the echo of old stories linger, a steady, reassuring presence. The past and present flow together, seamless and calm, as sleep settles over the room like a heavy quilt. In this gentle ritual, the stories remain, not written, not forgotten, but living quietly in the warmth of the family's embrace, waiting to be told again as winter returns and the world, once more, draws close around the fire. The woman who planted a rowan sapling beside her door. Imagine yourself in the first light of morning, the world outside still cool and faintly blue as the sun begins to edge over the distant hills. In a quiet village, the stones of cottages hold on to the gentle chill of night, dew sparkling along the grass at every doorstep. The stillness is broken only by the distant call of birds and the soft rustle of leaves as a breeze stirs through the hedgerows. On the edge of one such village, a small house sits with its garden close by. The earth here is dark and rich, turned each spring for new plantings, and the path to the door is worn smooth by the passage of years. Near the entrance, a sapling grows, thin, bright-leaved, and upright, its young branches reaching toward the growing light. This is a rowan, known in old stories for its protective magic, its bright berries a beacon against misfortune, its leaves said to whisper secrets when the wind is just right. The woman who lives here is neither young nor old, her hair caught back with a simple ribbon, her hands shaped by work and weather. She begins her day before most, opening her door to the quiet world beyond. Before the fire is lit or water drawn, she steps outside to greet the little tree beside her threshold. She speaks softly as one might to a beloved companion, sometimes a word, sometimes only a gentle touch at the base of the trunk. In these moments, memory and ritual blend together, a private conversation repeated each dawn. For the rowan is more than a bit of green against the wall. Long ago, the woman planted it herself, digging a shallow hole in the late autumn earth, her hands careful but firm as she set the sapling in place. It was an act of hope, and perhaps of mourning. Her brother, gone now many years, had loved rowan trees, had spoken of their beauty and their strength, their ability to thrive on windswept hillsides and stony ground. In the hush that followed his passing, the woman found comfort in this small gesture, to plant something living, something that might outlast sorrow, just beyond the reach of her door. Each morning since, she has greeted the rowan as if it were her brother himself. There is a steady comfort in the act, one that requires no audience and expects no answer. Still, when the wind moves through the slender branches and the leaves tremble in the golden air, she imagines the faintest echo of his voice, a memory that returns, not as a sound, but as a feeling just beneath the surface of things. These silent conversations, exchanged in glances and the soft shifting of green, are as real to her as any words spoken aloud. As seasons turn, the sapling grows, its roots thickening beneath the soil, its canopy widening to cast a faint shadow against the stone wall. The woman tends to it as she does to everything in her care, gently, attentively, with a patience learned from loss. She waters it when the days are dry, shields it from winter's harshest winds, and watches for the first hint of berries as summer wanes. Children from the village sometimes stop to ask about the tree, drawn by its delicate leaves or the clusters of red that brighten its branches each autumn. She tells them, simply, that it is a lucky tree, a guardian of the home, a companion through the years. Life within the house follows its own slow rhythms. Bread is baked, clothes are mended, floors swept clean. Each task is framed by the presence of the rowan just outside, visible through the doorway, its leaves flickering in the changing light. Some evenings, as the sun sets and the garden glows with the color of embers, the woman sits by her window and listens to the wind. If she closes her eyes, she can almost hear her brother's laughter, the stories he once told, the soft hush of his voice threaded through the rustling of branches. In this way, memory is sustained not by grand monuments or elaborate ceremonies, but by the smallest acts repeated each day. The planting of a sapling, the greeting at dawn, the attentive care through changing weather, all are gestures that quietly honor what has been lost while nurturing what still lives. The woman's devotion to the rowan becomes part of the fabric of her home, a secret comfort and a steady anchor as years slip quietly by. As time moves on, the sapling thickens into a tree, its roots gripping the earth more firmly with each passing season. The woman grows older, her steps slower, her hair touched with gray. Yet the ritual continues. Each morning she steps outside, offers her greeting, and feels the silent presence of her brother in the gentle movement of leaves. On the rare days when she is unable to go out, she watches from her window, trusting that the rowan remembers her as she remembers him. In the hush of evening, when the last light pools against the garden wall and the world grows quiet once more, the woman sits beside her hearth and reflects on all the seasons that have come and gone. The rowan stands just beyond her door, a living memory, a companion in solitude, a bridge between what is gone and what endures. In its silent shade, loss and love exist side by side, woven gently into the slow, persistent rhythm of ordinary life. And so the days continue, each one marked by the greeting of a tree, each silent conversation sustained by the wind, until the story of the woman and her rowan sapling becomes as natural and enduring as the morning light itself. The baker who marked loaves with a family symbol. Imagine yourself in a quiet town before sunrise, the world still wrapped in the soft blue of early morning. In the heart of this silence stands a small bakery, its stone walls already warm from the heat of a long-tended oven. The windows glow softly, lighting the cobblestone street with a golden promise of day to come. Inside, the baker is already at work, his sleeves rolled high and his hands dusted with flour, moving through the rhythm of dough and fire with a quiet, practiced ease. There is something peaceful in this early hour, the gentle crackle of burning wood, the slow, contented sigh of bread as it rises, and the familiar weight of memory woven into the morning. Each day is much like the last, but today holds a quieter significance known only to the baker and those closest to him. Today marks the anniversary of his mother's passing, a date that returns with the same gentle certainty as the changing of the seasons. Before the world outside stirs, the baker performs a simple ritual. After the dough has been kneaded and shaped, he takes a slender blade and scores each loaf with a symbol, a cross, intersected by a careful circle. It is a mark that seems ordinary enough to any passing eye, yet its meaning is deeply personal, known only to his family. The sign is a remembrance, a quiet message carried in the daily work of hands and heat. The cross stands for faith, for the quiet hope and endurance that shaped his mother's life, and the circle holds within it the idea of wholeness, of family gathered and unbroken by distance or loss. With each motion, the baker's hand is steady but gentle, honoring the memory that lives on in flour and water. He remembers, perhaps, his mother's own hands, guiding him through the art of kneading, her voice calm and clear even in the bustle of crowded kitchens. The pattern of the mark is a story told without words, hidden in plain sight. As the loaves rise, the scent of baking bread fills the shop, warm and earthy, a fragrance that drifts through open windows and settles over the street outside. People passing by might notice the smell and smile, drawn by the promise of breakfast, unaware of the small ritual taking place behind the counter. The bakery itself holds the hush of memory, faded photographs tucked into corners, a string of dried herbs above the hearth, and now, a row of marked loaves lined up on wooden boards. His family knows the meaning, though they never speak of it directly. When the loaves are brought to the table later in the day, someone will trace the cross and circle with a fingertip before tearing the first piece. It is a gesture so familiar it needs no explanation, a thread of continuity stretching across years and generations. In this way, remembrance becomes part of daily life, carried not as a heavy burden, but as a gentle presence, warm as bread, enduring as the dawn. The town itself may not notice the ritual, but small signs linger in the memory of the place. Children, half awake, wait at the counter for the first warm slice, the mark hidden in the crust like a secret just for them. Neighbors, who have visited the bakery for decades, recall that on certain days, the bread bears a different pattern, though they never ask its meaning. The baker, quiet and steady, lets the symbol speak for itself. In the quiet moments between batches, the baker sometimes pauses, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the work table. The fire hums in the oven, and the pattern of light and shadow moves gently across the walls. In these pauses, the bakery feels less like a shop and more like a sanctuary, a place where memory and love are baked into every corner, where each day's labor is both a duty and an offering. The ritual endures through seasons and years. Sometimes, a new apprentice will notice the mark and ask its purpose, and the baker will only smile, saying that every loaf carries a bit of its maker's story. The truth is quieter, tucked away in the unspoken rituals that make a house or a bakery a home. With every loaf, the circle and cross remain, a private language, a gesture of love passed down in silence. As dusk falls and the last loaves cool on the windowsill, the bakery empties, and quiet settles in. The marked bread is shared among family, torn and eaten with simple meals, the pattern fading as night returns. Yet the memory lingers, gently, in the familiar taste, in the scent of flour and yeast, in the marks pressed into crust. Years from now, the ritual may change, new symbols, new hands at the oven, but the essence will remain. Memory, after all, needs only the simplest vessel. In this bakery, it is flour and water, a cross and a circle, and the steady love of a family honoring what matters most. As you drift through this imagined morning, you can almost feel the warmth of the bakery, the softness of dough, the quiet comfort of tradition made visible in the gentlest of ways. The world outside is waking, but here, memory lingers, simple, steady, and enduring as bread. The pilgrim who left small offerings along the road. Imagine a winding road stretching out beneath the muted sky of an early morning, the mist clinging softly to hedgerows and the scent of dew-laden earth rising with every step. Along this quiet path, a solitary figure makes his way, his cloak wrapped close against the shifting breeze. He walks not for fame or fortune, but as a pilgrim, one among many who traverse the ancient roads, guided by purpose and memory. Yet, unlike others, his pilgrimage carries with it a private ritual, a gentle act of remembrance that unfolds with every mile. At the edge of each village, beneath the weathered roof of a wayside shrine or in the shadow of a carved stone, he pauses. His steps slow as he kneels quietly, reaching into the pouch at his belt. There is no gold to offer, no elaborate tribute, only a single pebble chosen from the roadside or a small sprig of heather plucked from the fields. These offerings are simple, nearly weightless, but each one is placed with careful intention. They are tokens, left not for himself, but for a friend now lost, whose memory he carries along the entire journey. The rhythm of his walk is steady and unhurried. Day after day, the path leads him through villages and woods, across meadows where the air shimmers with the hum of insects, past ruined walls and silent wells. At each marker, be it a saint's shrine, a crude cross, or even just a tree with ribbons knotted in the branches, he stops. There, another pebble joins the collection at the base of a statue, another sprig of heather rests among coins and faded flowers. With every small act, he knits the past gently into the present, creating a trail of remembrance invisible to any map, but alive in his own heart. To passers-by, these offerings might go unnoticed, blending into the landscape or swept away by the next strong wind. Yet, for the pilgrim, each one holds a memory, the sound of laughter on a summer evening, a conversation carried away by rain, the shape of a face that grows softer in recollection with each passing day. The miles accumulate beneath his feet, and so do the moments of quiet reflection, each pause a chance to honor a life that, though ended, continues in subtle ways. The tradition of leaving offerings along the road is older than the path itself. In a world where journeys are often long and uncertain, people have always sought ways to mark their passage, to ask for blessing, to give thanks, or simply to remember. Some pilgrims leave coins or bits of bread, others tie scraps of cloth to branches or carve initials into stones. But for this traveler, the gesture is intimate and consistent, a ritual that belongs to him alone. No shrine is too small or too forgotten. Each is honored equally, the act itself more important than any grand display. As he moves through the changing landscape, the pilgrim is accompanied by the quiet sounds of travel, the creak of leather, the gentle crunch of gravel, the wind whispering through the grass. His mind wanders, sometimes filled with memories, sometimes with prayers, sometimes simply with the peaceful emptiness that comes from walking for hours at a time. He greets fellow travelers with a nod or a brief word, but his true conversation is with the path and the one he remembers at every stop. At night, he rests beneath hedges or in the shelter of a barn, the stars wheeling slowly overhead. The day's offerings have already been made, the ritual completed until sunrise brings another stretch of road. The act is quiet, humble, never demanding recognition. It is enough to know that, along the miles, a pattern of remembrance has been laid, fragile but enduring, a living thread that weaves sorrow and gratitude into the world's fabric. Over weeks and months, the pilgrim's route becomes a kind of map made not of roads and towns, but of moments and meaning. The journey is marked not by destination, but by the accumulation of small gestures, the multiplication of tokens left behind. In time, grass will grow over pebbles, heather will wither, rain will wash even the memory of the offering away. Yet the act itself remains, an invisible record, a testament to love, to friendship, to the persistence of memory even when all else changes. As you picture this gentle traveler pausing again at another wayside stone, you sense the comfort found in repetition, in the soft weight of habit. The world may seem vast and indifferent, but in these small, deliberate acts, the boundaries between past and present blur. For the pilgrim, and for all who remember, the journey continues, a path written not on any map, but quietly, steadily, in the heart. The family who wore mourning hoods for a year. Imagine yourself in a small, close-knit village, the lanes winding quietly between timbered houses, the air scented with wood smoke and earth. Among the many routines that shaped daily life, baking bread, tending gardens, mending tools, there were customs that carried the weight of shared sorrow. In one house, at the edge of a muddy lane, a family moves quietly through their days, each adult marked by the simple black hood they wear whenever they step beyond their door. It begins, as such things often do, with the loss of someone beloved. The house, once filled with laughter and familiar voices, settles into a new rhythm, a gentler hush, a careful way of moving through rooms thick with memory. As the sun rises, the adults reach for their mourning hoods. Simple cloth, dyed the deepest black, drawn low over brow and cheek. The gesture is both public and private, a daily ritual of remembrance that sets them apart, yet draws them closer to those who know its meaning. Outside, as they walk to market or gather water from the well, the black hoods are unmistakable. Passers-by pause their conversations, voices softening in respect or sympathy. There are no awkward questions, no need to explain. The mourning hood speaks for them, a silent signal that sorrow lives in their house. For the villagers, the sight of the hood is a familiar one, woven into the cycle of seasons and the flow of community life. It is a sign of absence, but also of belonging, of loss made visible, and of grief held gently within the arms of tradition. The rhythm of days continues. Bread is kneaded and set to rise in the warmth near the fire, children play beneath watchful eyes, gardens are tended, and animals fed. Yet the black hoods lend a certain gravity to each task, a reminder that every action is touched by absence. Within the walls of the house, laughter still echoes now and then, but always in a hush, as if not to disturb the weight of memory. On stormy nights, the family gathers by the hearth, the flicker of flames illuminating faces half hidden by cloth. Grief does not disappear. It settles quietly, becoming another member of the household. Through the long months, the hoods become part of the family's identity. They grow soft with wear, shaped by the contours of each head, the fabric infused with the scent of rain and hearth smoke. The village, too, weaves its life around these markers. At church, at feasts, at the turning of the seasons, the black hoods remind everyone that sorrow is not just a private burden, but a shared human experience. There is comfort in recognition, a hand squeezed at market, a nod from a neighbor, the quiet respect of those who have known their own season of mourning. As weeks turn to months, the shape of grief shifts. The pain softens, the memory of laughter becomes less sharp. The family begins to remember not just the loss, but the fullness of what was shared, the sound of a voice, the shape of a smile, the gentle touch of a hand. Still, every morning, the hoods are donned again, each time a small act of fidelity to the past. Finally, after 12 slow-turning months, the day comes when the mourning hoods are set aside. There is no ceremony, just a quiet understanding that the time of public mourning has ended. The family stands at the threshold, uncertain at first without the familiar shroud of black. Faces long hidden are revealed to the world. marked by sunlight and time, by the deepening of lines and the quieting of sorrow. It is a moment of relief, but also of loss. A second farewell, quieter and more subtle than the first, as if closing a door on a chapter already fading into memory. For the villagers, the lifting of the hoods is met with gentle acceptance. Life folds back into its broader rhythm, greetings are brighter, laughter a little freer, but the shared understanding remains. Those who wore the hoods walk with a new quietness, touched forever by what they carried and released. So, as you drift, imagine the soft weight of cloth over your brow, the muffled sounds of the world filtered through tradition, the subtle shift when morning becomes memory. In the rhythm of the days, the donning and doffing of black, the slow easing of grief, you find a story as old as time, loss, remembrance, and the gentle return of hope. The mourning hood, once heavy with sorrow, is folded away, yet the sense of belonging, of shared human feeling, lingers quietly, as comforting as the hush of night and the first warmth of dawn. The woman who sang a single verse before sleep, imagine yourself in a quiet cottage at the edge of night. The day's last chores are finished, the hearth's glow softened to a gentle shimmer on the walls. Outside, the darkness settles thickly, wrapping the house in quiet and drawing every sound inward. Within these walls, routines fall into their evening rhythm. A mug set down, a blanket drawn close, a candle's flicker mirrored in half-closed eyes. Each night, before sleep, a single voice rises in the stillness. It is a woman's voice, low and steady, shaped by years of practice and gentle habit. She sits beside her bed, hands folded, her silhouette etched softly by the fading candlelight. The melody she sings is always the same, a simple line that drifts like smoke above the hush of the room. It is the song her mother once sang to her, the tune as familiar as the beating of her own heart. The verse is short, only a handful of words, but each note falls into place with quiet certainty. The song slips through the rafters and into the fabric of the night, its repetition comforting, its cadence as steady as breath. Sometimes, the words come easily, shaped by memory and longing. Other nights, the words elude her, scattered by the years. Still, the melody remains, soft and unchanging, a gentle thread tying her to the past. In the silent intervals, the song carries more than words. It holds the echo of her mother's presence, the warmth of childhood blankets, the peace of being held and known. The tune fills the spaces that words can no longer reach, its shape molded by the passing seasons, yet never lost. The ritual is never hurried. Each night, she begins again, letting the music guide her gently towards sleep. The world outside, with its worries and noise, is kept at bay by the soft persistence of the melody. Over time, even as memory slips away and the lines between days blur, the song remains, faithful, patient, quietly luminous in the darkness. Those who listen, if anyone is near, recognize the power of this nightly verse. Children fall asleep to its rhythm. Neighbors, passing beneath an open window, sometimes pause to listen, feeling the soothing repetition settle in their hearts. The song becomes part of the house itself, woven into the walls, lingering in the air long after the final note has faded. When she can no longer recall the words, her voice does not falter. The melody alone is enough. It carries the memory forward, singing what cannot be spoken, comforting even as it slips beyond language. Night after night, the tune endures, unbroken, unchanged, a quiet anchor in the flowing river of time. As you imagine yourself in that quiet room, let the song's soft refrain echo in your mind. Its simple beauty is a reminder that memory sometimes survives not in stories or names, but in the smallest rituals, a melody repeated, a voice at rest, the gentle promise that, even as words fade, comfort can remain. And as sleep draws near, you find yourself listening for that single, steadfast verse, familiar, steady, and calm, a quiet melody carrying memory into the waiting dark. The farmer who left a chair empty at every meal, imagine yourself in a farmhouse at the edge of rolling fields, the windows glowing faintly in the last golden light of afternoon. The air inside is thick with the familiar warmth of bread just pulled from the oven, the slow steam of a simmering stew, and the scent of earth carried in from boots at the door. The long wooden table at the center of the kitchen is worn smooth by years of hands, by the rhythm of meals served and stories told, of laughter echoing against the beams overhead, and the low murmur of voices as dusk gives way to night. The table is large, built to seat family, neighbors, and the occasional stranger. Plates and cups are set out with practiced care, each place marked by a simple folded cloth. But one chair, always the same at the far end by the window, remains empty. Its seat bears the faint outline of someone once beloved, the wood polished by memory more than by use. A bowl and a cup rest before it, as if the person for whom they are intended might return at any moment. Their absence felt not as a sharp wound, but as a quiet, constant presence. The farmer, broad-shouldered and gentle in manner, keeps this custom without fanfare. Years ago, when loss came to the household, a brother, a child, a parent, gone before their time, the family felt the familiar ache of emptiness settle around the table. The first days were hardest, each meal punctuated by the echo of silence where a voice used to be, by the instinctive glance toward the missing seat. There was no ceremony, no great declaration, just a shared understanding that some absences are too large to be ignored, that memory, like hunger, returns with every meal. So the farmer began to set the place each day, a simple ritual. The bowl was filled, the cup set upright, the chair drawn out just so. In the beginning, it was an act of mourning, a gesture that acknowledged pain without needing words. The family ate in the presence of the empty chair, sometimes glancing toward it, sometimes letting their gaze pass over it as naturally as the flame in the hearth or the window's view of distant fields. As seasons turned and sorrow softened at the edges, the custom remained. Children grew, guests arrived and departed, but the empty chair was never moved, never pressed into service for an extra guest. It became a fixture, as much a part of the household as the great clock or the braided rug by the door. The act of setting the place grew gentle and familiar, a comfort rather than a burden, a way of making room for memory without letting grief overwhelm the living. Neighbors would sometimes ask about the chair, their voices lowered in curiosity or sympathy. The farmer answered simply, if at all, content to let the ritual speak for itself. For those who ate at the table, the empty seat became a quiet invitation to remembrance, a space where stories could be told, laughter could return, and sorrow could coexist with the daily act of sharing bread and broth. Over time, the family learned to see the custom not as a sign of loss, but as a subtle celebration of connection, a way to honor the ties that endure even after hands have stilled and voices have faded. On winter nights, when the wind rattled the shutters and darkness pressed close, the empty chair seemed almost to glow in the firelight. Children would sometimes whisper that they saw a shadow there, or heard a faint breath, as if the lost one had slipped quietly into place, content to watch over the meal from the comfort of their old seat. No one corrected them. Such imaginings felt right, a gentle easing of the boundary between past and present. As years passed, the custom shaped the household's rhythm. New faces joined the table, marriages, births, friends passing through, yet always, the place at the end remained waiting, a silent companion to the living. On holidays and feast days, an extra slice of bread was placed beside the cup, a token offering for the absent. The gesture brought comfort, a reminder that love could be carried forward, made tangible through the simplest of acts. When the farmer grew old and his own place at the table shifted nearer to the window, the family continued the ritual. Children who had once wondered at the custom took it up themselves, teaching the younger ones to set the empty chair with care and respect. In this way, the memory of the lost became woven into the fabric of home, an enduring thread, subtle but unbreakable, that joined each generation to those who came before. In the hush that settles after a meal, as the fire burns low and the fields outside slip into darkness, the empty chair is a gentle presence, a reminder that every absence is also a space for love, for memory, for hope. In the quiet clatter of dishes and the soft sweep of the broom, the custom lives on, comforting and unhurried, an ordinary grace that makes the table and the home whole. And so, night after night, the family gathers, the farmer's table always set for one more, the empty chair holding its place in the gentle rhythm of life that goes on. The child who carved initials into the barn door, Imagine yourself on the edge of a gentle countryside, where fields roll softly to the horizon and every day seems to unfold with a quiet, measured grace. There, in the early morning light, stands a weathered barn, its broad doors made of old oak, scarred by seasons and softened by the touch of many hands. The boards are dark with age, the grain raised and splintered from years of rain and sun. In the hush just before dawn, a breeze stirs the grasses, carrying the scent of earth and hay, and you can almost hear the faint creak of hinges as the barn sighs into wakefulness. Against this slow, unhurried backdrop, a small boy stands, a knife clutched in his hand, a gift handed down or borrowed for the morning, the blade notched and the handle worn smooth by older fingers. He is still, intent, the hush of the farm around him as comforting as a blanket. Beside him, the barn looms, familiar and vast, a place of shadows and secrets, where animals rustle in their stalls and the cool, dark earth holds the memory of last year's straw. The boy's sister, perhaps just a little older, stands nearby, curiosity sparking in her eyes. She watches as her brother, tongue pressed to the corner of his mouth in concentration, lifts the knife to the door. With careful, tentative strokes, he begins to carve her initials into the old oak, letters chosen with pride, drawn first in the air, then etched slowly, line by patient line. The wood yields reluctantly, the marks shallow at first, then deepening with each pass. The moment is quiet, the only sound the soft scrape of metal against grain, the faint chirp of sparrows in the rafters. It is an act both ordinary and extraordinary, a boy marking the world with his own hands, recording the bond of family in a language older than memory. The initials are simple, nothing more than 2 letters, yet they carry the weight of mornings spent together, of laughter shared in the hayloft, of secret games played among the dust motes and beams of sunlight that filter through the gaps in the wall. Days pass, and the marks remain. Seasons turn, each leaving its own gentle signature on the barn. Rain darkens the wood, summer heat cracks it, winter frost creeps along the grain. The carved letters weather all of it, fading slowly but never quite vanishing. The boy grows, his hand growing steadier, his back stronger from chores and years. He learns to tend animals, to lift heavy bales, to repair the fences that mark the boundaries of home. Yet each time he passes the barn door, perhaps with an armload of straw or a pail of water, his hand drifts almost unconsciously to the carved initials, tracing their outline, feeling the familiar grooves beneath his fingers. The ritual becomes as natural as breath. Even when the sharp lines soften, when moss and dust gather in the hollows, he knows every curve by heart. The memory of that morning, of his sister's delighted smile, lives in the movement of his hand. It is a small thing, a gesture unnoticed by the world beyond the farm, but for him it is a touchstone, a silent way to remember not only his sister, but the whole rhythm of childhood, the taste of early apples, the song of the creek after rain, the slow, golden evenings that seemed to stretch forever. As the boy becomes a man, the farm changes around him. Tools are replaced, fences are moved, even the barn itself creaks beneath the weight of new seasons. Yet the initials remain, now so faded they are little more than a shadow. Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, he stands before the door, eyes closed, and lets his hand find the marks. In that simple motion, he feels the years roll back, the sharpness of the knife, the roughness of the oak, the presence of his sister beside him. Though the letters are nearly gone, his hand remembers the shape of each line, the story they hold written in muscle and memory. Neighbors and visitors might not notice the initials, or might take them for some old tally, the record of a long-forgotten harvest. But for the family and for the man who was once that boy, the marks are a private story, a piece of history carried not on paper, but in wood and flesh, in the patient repetition of touch. Sometimes, in the hush of dusk, as the barn settles and the animals sleep, he will tell the story to his own children, tracing the lines in the fading light. They listen eyes wide, hearing not just the tale of a boy and a knife, but the promise that small acts endure, that love can be written into the very bones of home. Perhaps one day, one of them will add their own mark, another set of initials, another memory woven quietly into the door. And so, the barn stands, seasons flowing around it, the marks on the door a gentle record of lives lived in rhythm with the land. The story is not grand, nor loud. It is whispered in the scrape of a knife, in the sweep of a hand across old wood, in the memory of moments too fleeting to keep any other way. As you drift toward sleep, you can picture the old oak door, warm in the evening sun, initials carved deep, then faded, then remembered by touch alone. A story lingering in the grain, waiting quietly for another dawn. The family who kept a bundle of letters no one could read. Imagine a quiet room at the far end of an old house, where the air is cool and the light falls softly through a narrow window. On a high shelf, above rows of carefully folded linen, sits a bundle of letters, old, their paper yellowed with time, the edges curled like the petals of dried flowers. The letters are tied with a strip of faded cloth, the knot precise but tender, as if someone hoped to keep the contents safe not only from dust and sunlight, but from the slow forgetting that creeps in across generations. No one living remembers exactly who wrote the letters. The handwriting, elegant and strange, is shaped by habits no one now possesses, and words twist in forms unfamiliar to modern eyes. Sometimes a family member will climb the creaking steps stool and take down the bundle, weighing it in their hand, turning it over slowly as if the meaning might be absorbed by touch alone. They wonder what secrets, sorrows, or joys might be hidden within, but always the letters are returned to their resting place, the cloth retied, the mystery left undisturbed. The presence of the letters becomes its own quiet tradition, woven into the daily rhythm of the household. Children learn early that the bundle is precious, not to be played with or lost. The elders speak of it with a kind of reverence. These belong to those who came before us, and though no one can read them, the letters become a living thread that connects past and present. Every so often, on a winter evening or a quiet afternoon when work is done, the family will gather and speak of the people whose names are only half remembered, of places hinted at in old stories, their details blurring like ink on damp paper. Sometimes, a visiting friend or distant cousin will try to puzzle out a word or two, tracing a line with a thoughtful finger, tilting the page to catch the light. They might recognize a single name or a date pressed into the margin, but the meaning remains elusive. Over time, the letters become not just a record of something lost, but a testament to the stubbornness of memory itself, a proof that the desire to remember can outlast understanding, that love and longing can survive even when the language to express them is gone. Life in the house continues much as it always has. Meals are cooked, repairs made, days measured out by the slow, familiar patterns of work and rest. Yet the letters remain, untouched except for careful hands, their silence as eloquent as any spoken word. The family finds comfort in the act of keeping them safe, in honoring the mystery, in accepting that some things are meant simply to endure. There is a gentle strength in this kind of remembrance, in the willingness to preserve without needing to possess, to honor without demanding answers. As the years pass, the bundle is joined by other small tokens: a button from a soldier's coat, a lock of hair wrapped in paper, a photograph whose faces have long since faded into the grain. Each object becomes part of a quiet museum, a place where the heart's attachments outlive certainty or clarity. Children grow up and move away, elders pass on, and still the letters remain, retied and replaced on the shelf, watched over by those who understand their worth lies not in what they reveal, but in what they preserve. Every so often, a shaft of sunlight will find its way into the room, warming the letters for an hour or two before slipping away. Dust motes dance in the air, and the silence deepens, gentle and unhurried. In that stillness, you sense the comfort that comes from continuity, from the knowledge that some gestures, however humble, can link generations in quiet solidarity. As you imagine yourself in this peaceful place, the world outside fades into softness. The bundle of letters sits quietly overhead, patient and enduring, a silent promise that remembrance is possible even without understanding, and that the act of holding on is, sometimes, all that is needed to keep the past alive within the present. And so, in the hush of evening or the hush of memory, the desire to remember goes on, untangled, unread, but never forgotten.